I swear, Jace, if I have to sell my left kidney to get you into this stadium, we're still going. Vance Foster stood in line outside the packed soccer stadium, one hand gripping his 8-year-old son's shoulder, the other clutching 2 crumpled tickets. The nosebleed seats were all he could afford, but Jace didn't care. His son's eyes sparkled under the sunlight, hair sticking up in every direction, face painted with their team's colors. "This is the best day of my life," Jace said, bouncing on his toes. Vance smiled, exhaustion lining his features. "Let's not jinx it until we actually get in." They made it past security, climbed what felt like 100 stairs, and landed in the top corner of the stadium where the view was more sky than field. But Jace didn't complain. He leaned forward, completely absorbed. Vance sat beside him, sipping a cheap soda and trying not to think about how many shifts at the auto repair shop he'd need to cover the tickets. 3 rows below, in seats that cost more than Vance's monthly rent, sat a woman in dark sunglasses and a crisp white blouse. Her name was Gianna Prescott, and she looked like she belonged in a fashion ad, not a soccer stadium. But there she was, watching the game with surprising intensity until Jace's voice rang out behind her. "Go, go, yes," she turned, amused at the tiny explosion of energy just behind her. Then her eyes met Vance's. He was laughing at his son, completely unaware she was watching. His face was rugged, lined with effort and long days. His dark hair flopped over his forehead as he nudged Jace playfully. There was something about the way his eyes softened when he looked at his son. It wasn't just fatherly love, it was devotion. Fierce, protective, warm. Gianna blinked. She hadn't come to the match expecting anything but distraction. Her assistant had practically forced her to take a day off. "You need something real, G," she'd said. "Go out and be around people who don't pitch app ideas over caviar." So here she was, and there he was. She kept watching. Midway through the second half, Jace's paper popcorn tray fell forward and tumbled toward the lower rows. He gasped. "My popcorn," Vance groaned. "We're not buying another tray, bud, I got it." Jace darted down the steps, too quick for Vance to grab him. "Jace." "Hey, Jace." Gianna stood up, already moving toward the aisle. "He's okay," she called, her voice calm, collected. "He's right here." Vance jogged down after her, his boots thudding on the metal stairs. When he reached her level, Jace was standing beside her, holding his popcorn and grinning. Gianna handed the tray back to the boy. "Saved by gravity." "Thanks," Vance said, catching his breath. "I usually don't let him run off like that. We're just kind of out of our element here." "No worries," she said, offering a small smile. "I like kids." "He's got a good cheering voice." "Too good," Vance muttered, glancing at Jace, who was now trying to high-five strangers. "I'm Gianna," she said. "Vance, this is Jace." Gianna nodded. "It's nice to meet you both." He looked her over quickly. Designer heels, tailored jeans, sunglasses that probably cost more than his car's transmission. "You here with family?" "No, just needed to get out of my head." He raised a brow. "Soccer's good for that, I guess. Better than another boardroom." Vance chuckled. "You a lawyer or something?" "Something like that." They stood there awkwardly for a moment until Jace tugged on Gianna's sleeve. "Do you want to come up and watch the rest with us?" Vance opened his mouth to tell him no, but Gianna surprised them both. "Sure." "Really?" Jace beamed. "We have the best view. You can see all the ants, I mean players." Vance scratched the back of his neck. "You don't have to, seriously." "I know our seats are. I want to." She smiled again, then climbed the steps behind them. By the time the match ended, the 3 of them were laughing like old friends. Jace had convinced Gianna to paint a team stripe on her cheek, and Vance had finally relaxed. "Do you guys come to these often?" she asked as they walked toward the exit. Vance shook his head. "First time, probably last for a while." Gianna didn't ask why, she could guess. His shoes were worn, his jacket patched at the elbow, and his eyes had the tired kind of careful that came from living paycheck to paycheck. Still, he didn't look bitter, just tired, and full of heart. "Can I buy you both dinner?" she asked suddenly. Vance blinked. "That's really nice of you, but we should probably head home." Jace's face fell. "Dad, it's okay," Gianna said gently. "Maybe another time." Vance nodded, grateful but cautious. "Yeah, maybe." They reached the parking lot, and Gianna walked toward a sleek black town car. Vance lifted Jace into the back of their aging sedan, the door creaking as it closed. Before she got in, Gianna called out, "Vance," he turned. "I meant it. I'd like to see you again." He swallowed hard. "You don't even know me." "I don't have to." "I know what I saw today." Her eyes lingered on his for a second too long. Then she climbed into her car. Vance stood there for a full minute after she drove off. "Dad," Jace called from the back seat. Was she a movie star or something? Vance stared at the space her car had been. "I don't know, buddy." But something about the way she looked at him. It felt like the start of something. Something big, something real. The next morning, Vance was elbow-deep in the engine of a rusted-out Buick at the shop when the door swung open and sunlight poured in. He didn't look up. His hands were covered in grease, and he already had a customer waiting on an oil change who was pacing like his car was a ticking bomb. "Excuse me," a voice called out, clear and calm. He froze. He knew that voice. He turned slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. Gianna stood there, out of place among the oil stains and hanging fan belts, wearing a navy trench coat and ankle boots that had no business near a mechanic's bay. "You found me?" he asked, more surprised than anything else. "You left your name with the ticket manager," she said, lifting a shoulder. "I asked nicely." Vance chuckled under his breath. "You tracked me down through stadium staff. Don't make it sound creepy. I just wanted to say thank you properly." She held out a small white box. "For Jace." He didn't take it. "You didn't need to bring anything, I know." He hesitated, then set down the rag and took the box. "Thanks, he'll be excited." "I figured he might like a signed team ball." Vance blinked. "You got a player to sign it, 3 of them actually." "The coach too." He opened his mouth to respond, but the pacing customer cleared his throat loudly. "You said 20 minutes. Vance gave Gianna an apologetic glance. "I'm kind of swamped right now." "I didn't come to interrupt your day," she said. "I just wanted to see if you'd let me buy you that dinner, tonight." He looked away. "Look, I appreciate it, but I'm not really in your world." She stepped closer, the scent of citrus and something expensive reaching him. "That's exactly why I want to have a meal with you." "I don't have someone to watch Jace. He can come too." Vance studied her face, waiting for the punchline. "You want to take a mechanic and his 8-year-old son to dinner at. What's some 5-star place with cloth napkins and valet parking?" "No," she smiled, but it wasn't mocking. "I want to eat somewhere we can actually talk." He glanced back at the Buick, then at the man still glaring at him near the front counter. "I get off at 6. I'll pick you up at 6:30. And don't worry, I'm not taking you anywhere with foie gras." He shook his head as she walked out the door. "This is insane," he muttered under his breath. That evening, Vance stood in the living room of their small 2-bedroom apartment, trying to get Jace's cowlick to stay down. His son was dressed in his best jeans and a button-up shirt that didn't have any superhero logos on it, which was an accomplishment in itself. "I still don't get it," Jace said. "Why is she having dinner with us?" Vance adjusted his own collar, frowning at the mirror. "I'm not entirely sure." When Gianna arrived, she wasn't in heels or anything glamorous. She wore jeans, a soft-looking sweater, and her hair tied back. She looked normal, but Vance knew better. They drove to a quiet diner on the edge of the city, vinyl booths, waitresses who knew your name. It was the kind of place Vance brought Jace on birthdays when he could scrounge enough overtime. Inside, Jace slid into the booth beside Gianna like they'd been eating together for years. "You ever eat waffles for dinner?" he asked her. "All the time," she said, not missing a beat. Vance ordered coffee. Gianna got the same. Jace went straight for the chocolate milk. "So," Vance said after the waitress left, "I think I deserve to know what you actually do." "I co-founded a software firm. We design automation systems for luxury properties." He blinked. "Like smart homes, exactly, and that pays. Well enough." He leaned back, still not fully understanding why she was here. "You probably know people with yachts." "I do." "Why are you having dinner with me and my kid in a diner that smells like fried bacon grease?" She folded her hands on the table. "Because I like how you look at him." Vance stiffened slightly. "You don't see him as a burden," she continued. "You see him as the best part of your life. I don't always see that kind of love, and I wanted to be around it." He let out a long breath. "I'm no saint. I'm not looking for one." Jace returned from the bathroom and slid back into the booth. "Did I miss anything?" Just talking about how cool you are, Gianna said. Jace beamed and picked up his menu again. After dinner, they stood outside the diner under flickering neon lights. The air was crisp and the smell of rain lingered from earlier. Vance rubbed his neck. Thanks for dinner. And the ball, Gianna nodded. It was a good night. I still don't get what you're doing here. I'm not sure either, she admitted, but I want to find out. He looked down at Jace, who was now pretending to kick an invisible soccer ball across the sidewalk. I don't have time for games. Neither do I. They stood there for a few seconds too long. Then she leaned down and brushed a kiss against Jace's hair. See you soon, star player. Jace giggled. You're cool for a grown-up. Gianna laughed, then slid into her car and pulled away. Vance watched her tail lights disappear into the dark. Dad, Jace asked, tugging on his sleeve. Yeah, do you think she'll come back? He stared at the empty street. I think she already has. The first time Vance stepped inside Gianna's world, it was by accident. He hadn't planned to show up at her office. In fact, he'd only come downtown to pick up a part for a vintage Mustang he was working on. But Jace had insisted they surprise Gianna with the player figurine he'd made at school, an awkward clay version of her favorite goalie, complete with oversized gloves and a crooked smile. Vance figured they'd drop it off with the receptionist and leave. But when they walked into the sleek glass lobby of Prescott Dynamics, things changed fast. Mr. Foster, the woman at the front desk asked, blinking at his torn denim jacket and the small boy trying to balance the clay statue in both hands. Yeah, we're just here to, she's been expecting you. Top floor, he frowned. I didn't make an appointment. She said if you come, send you up. Vance shot Jace a wary glance. You didn't tell her we were coming, right? Jace shook his head wide-eyed. They were ushered to a private elevator, its doors gleaming like a mirror. Vance tried not to feel out of place, but the polished floors, the LED-lit directory, and the silence, it all screamed money. Jace, meanwhile, was too busy watching the floor numbers climb like a countdown to outer space. The doors opened directly into a sun-soaked office that looked more like a penthouse suite than a workspace. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the skyline, and a series of minimalist paintings lined the walls. Gianna stood by a long table, reviewing printed schematics with two sharply dressed men who stopped speaking the second she turned. You're early, she said, walking toward them with something in her face Vance hadn't seen before relief. Didn't mean to interrupt, Vance said, adjusting Jace's backpack strap. We were nearby. He made you something. Gianna crouched to Jace's level as he held out the clay figure. I made him from memory, Jace said. His arms are too long, but I didn't have more brown paint for his hair. Gianna took the statue like it was made of gold. It's perfect. One of the men behind her cleared his throat. We've got the conference call in 10. She waved a hand. Push it 15. Then to Vance, come see something. He followed her to the window. Below, a construction site stretched the length of a city block. Tower cranes hovered over scaffolding and crews moved like ants across the grid. That's our new project, she said. Luxury condos with full automation, climate controls, voice-activated everything, even biometric entry. Vance crossed his arms. That's a lot of tech to trust with your house key, she laughed. You sound like my father, smart man. Her expression shifted at that, but she didn't explain. Instead, she turned to Jace. Want to see the prototype penthouse? Can I? It's just upstairs. Vance hesitated. You sure we're not getting in the way? I wouldn't ask if I didn't mean it. They followed her through a private stairwell to the rooftop level where a model unit had been built to exact specifications. Inside, the place was breathtaking. Marble counters, glass walls that opened with a wave, a fireplace that ignited with a word. Jace ran from room to room like it was a maze. Gianna walked beside Vance, watching him absorb the space. It feels like a hotel, Vance said. That's the goal. And people actually live in places like this. Some people don't live anywhere else, he nodded slowly. And here I am worried about replacing a busted carburetor. She tilted her head. Do you ever think about doing something else? He looked at her. You mean besides fixing cars and raising my boy? I mean your own shop, something that's yours. Vance exhaled. I think about it all the time, but thinking doesn't pay rent. I've got Jace, I can't gamble on a dream. Gianna studied him, the city reflected in the window glass behind her. What if it wasn't a gamble? He turned. What are you saying? She hesitated. I've been looking to invest in something small, something that matters, not software, not screens, something real. Vance shook his head. No, I'm not taking your money. I'm not offering a handout. I'd want a stake. A partnership. He narrowed his eyes. Why? Because I believe in people who build things, who fix things, and I believe in you. He looked away, jaw tightening. You don't even know me, I'm starting to. Before he could respond, Jace skidded back into the room. There's a TV in the bathtub, Gianna laughed, the tension breaking. Just don't turn it on while it's full. They spent another hour exploring, and when it was time to leave, Gianna walked them to the elevator. Vance leaned against the doorframe. You really serious about that investment? I don't offer things I don't mean. Let me think about it, she nodded. Of course. Jace tugged her sleeve as the elevator chimed. Can I bring you something else next time? Maybe a clay version of our dog. You have a dog. No. But I can imagine one. Gianna laughed again. You're impossible. As the doors closed, Vance caught the look she gave him. It wasn't pity or curiosity. It was something quieter, more dangerous, hope. That night, after Jace had fallen asleep curled on the couch with his toy car clutched in one hand, Vance sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. He stared at the blank page a long time. Then he started to write, Foster and Son Auto, full service, family owned. He paused, then added one more word at the bottom corner of the page, possible. The grand opening of Foster and Son Auto wasn't flashy. There were no streamers or ribbon-cutting ceremonies. Just a new sign bolted above the refurbished garage doors, a fresh coat of paint on the walls, and a coffee machine that no longer wheezed like a dying animal. But for Vance, it was everything. He stood outside the shop, hands in the pockets of his navy work jacket, watching the morning light stretch across the parking lot. Inside, Jace was arranging a stack of hand-drawn flyers on the front counter, pausing occasionally to admire the framed photo of a clay soccer player beside the register. Gianna's investment had come through quietly. No strings, no press, no power plays. Just a contract, signed in ink and trust, that gave Vance full creative control. She didn't even ask to put her name on the building. That morning, she arrived just before opening, holding 2 cups of coffee and a small white bag. You didn't have to bring anything, Vance said, already reaching for one of the cups. I didn't, she replied. This is for Jace. She handed him the bag. Inside was a miniature mechanic's jumpsuit, just his size, complete with a patch that read, Assistant Manager. He's going to wear this every day until college, Vance said, shaking his head with a low laugh. Gianna stepped inside, glancing around the remodeled space. You did this fast. I didn't sleep much, she looked at him. Why? Because I was afraid it wasn't real, that I'd wake up and it would all be gone. Gianna's expression softened. It's real. He nodded once, then walked over to the counter where Jace was now whispering to the clay goalie like it was a lucky charm. I'm still learning how to run a business, Vance said. I've made mistakes already. I will again. Good, Gianna replied. That means you're doing it right. He turned toward her. I've been thinking about something. Go on. You've seen my world. The busted engines, the late nights, the stress, but I've only been scratching the surface of yours. I've never been to one of your events, never met anyone from your circle, and if we're gonna keep doing this. Gianna raised an eyebrow. You want to meet the wolves. I want to know what they see when they look at you. Because when I look at you, I forget you run a company that could buy this entire street. She didn't answer right away. Then, there's a gala this Friday. It's a fundraiser for urban tech education. I'm one of the sponsors. Sounds fancy. It is. Do I have to wear a tux, just a suit? Clean, pressed, and no oil stains. Vance hesitated. Jace, I've already arranged for Molly to watch him. She used to nanny for me when I first started the company. She's excited. He looked surprised. You planned ahead. I always do. That Friday, Vance stood in front of his closet, staring at the one suit he owned, deep charcoal, slightly snug in the shoulders. He hadn't worn it since his brother's wedding. He brushed it off, ran a lint roller across it twice, and checked the mirror. By the time Gianna picked him up, he was ready. Nervous, but ready. The gala was held in a glass atrium in the heart of the city. Strings of warm lights floated overhead like constellations, and a quartet played a haunting arrangement beneath a curtain of silk drapes. Vance had never seen so many men in tailored suits or so many women in dresses that shimmered like liquid metal. Gianna walked beside him, her hand linked loosely through his arm. She wore deep burgundy, her hair swept up, her presence commanding without saying a word. They turned heads. She introduced him to board members, tech donors, and government liaisons. Vance shook hands, smiled when appropriate, and kept his answers short. He didn't pretend to belong. He didn't need to. After a while, Gianna led him to the rooftop terrace where the city stretched out like a sea of fireflies. "I'm out of my depth," he said quietly. "No, you're not." He turned toward her. "You really think this can work? You and me, we're from different worlds." "No," she said gently. "We're just from different starting lines, but we've been running toward the same thing all along." He looked down at the city. "Jace asked me something the other day. He said, 'Is she going to stay?' I didn't know what to tell him." Her voice was steady. "Tell him yes." Vance turned, his chest tight. "Don't say it unless you mean it." "I don't say anything I don't mean." He stepped closer. The city faded behind them. "I've been afraid, not of you, of what it would mean to let someone in this far. I've spent so long making sure Jace felt safe, I forgot what it felt like to be safe myself." Gianna reached for his hand. "You're not alone anymore." He exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Is this the part where I say something romantic?" "No," she said, leaning in. "It's the part where you kiss me." So he did. The kiss wasn't perfect. It was warm and a little hesitant, like two people learning how to fit into something they hadn't dared believe was theirs. But it was real. Afterward, she rested her forehead against his. "I don't need a penthouse or a private jet. I just need you." "And Jace," Vance added, she smiled. "Especially him." Later that night, they returned to his apartment where Jace was asleep on the couch, the jumpsuit laid out beside him, ready for the next day. Gianna sat beside Vance in the silence, her head on his shoulder, her heels kicked off. No gala, no boardrooms, no billion-dollar contracts, just a mechanic, his son, and the woman who saw something extraordinary in both. And this time, none of them were going anywhere. The garage calendar flipped to late spring, the scent of cut grass and engine grease floating through the open bay doors of Foster and Son Auto. Business had picked up steadily, word of mouth spreading through the neighborhood about the new shop with honest prices, and a kid who handed out flyers with a grin bigger than the sun. Vance adjusted the torque wrench in his hand, then leaned over the hood of a '67 Impala, sunlight catching the faint gray threads at his temples. He wasn't tired, not like before. He was building something now, something that felt permanent. Gianna stepped into the garage wearing a soft ivory blouse and jeans rolled at the ankle, her hair tied back loosely. She didn't hesitate, weaving around the tool carts with quiet confidence. "Got a minute?" she asked, tugging gently at the collar of his shirt. He set the wrench down. "For you." "Always. I need your help with something. If it's about that espresso machine you tried to program to order groceries, I'm not touching it again." She grinned as she pulled a folded brochure from her back pocket. "No, it's this." He took it, brows lifting. "A community center. We've been working on the design for a while. It'll have a tech lab, a workshop space, and after-school programs, but I want something else. A garage." Vance looked up slowly. "A garage for teens. A place to teach practical skills, auto repair, diagnostics, even restoration. You'd lead it." He stared at her, the weight of the offer sinking in. "You're serious." "I never joke about purpose." "And you think I can run a second garage? You already have. You just didn't know it." His hand tightened around the brochure. "You believe in me more than I ever did." "That's not true anymore." Jace came barreling out of the office, paint on his fingers and a grin on his face. "I finished it." He held up a poster. A cartoon of Vance holding a wrench like a superhero, with the words "Fix It Fridays at the Foster Garage" scrawled above his head. Gianna crouched beside him. "Did you draw that?" "Yeah, it's for the wall in the new place." "The one with the teen cars." Vance looked between them. "You already told him." I asked what he thought. He said, "Only if I get to help." Jace nodded solemnly. "I'll show them how to change air filters." Vance crouched down too, brushing a bit of paint off Jace's cheek. "Guess I'm outnumbered." Gianna placed a hand on the back of his neck. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. 3 weeks later, the first day of the youth workshop arrived. Vance stood in front of a group of teenagers, all in matching navy coveralls with the Foster logo stitched over the pocket. Gianna sat in the back of the room, notebook in hand, watching as he explained the basics of engine diagnostics without a single note. After the session, one of the boys lingered. "Do you own both garages now?" "Technically," Vance replied, wiping his hands, "but I'm not the only one running them." "Who's the other boss?" He glanced toward Gianna, who was now squatting beside Jace, helping him sort through a box of fuses. "She is." Later that evening, Vance drove them to a quiet field just outside the city where the stars were visible without the haze of buildings. He laid a blanket across the hood of their old sedan, and they all climbed on top, watching the sky. "I used to come out here when things got heavy," Vance said. "Didn't matter what was going wrong, this view reminded me I was still small, still lucky to be breathing." Gianna leaned her head against his shoulder. "Why'd you bring us?" "Because I'm not carrying it alone anymore," Jace pointed upward. "That one looks like a wrench," Gianna laughed. "Only you would see that." They stayed there until the cool breeze turned into a chill, then loaded back into the car. On the drive home, Jace fell asleep in the backseat, hand curled around the corner of the new workshop brochure like it was a bedtime story. Vance parked outside their apartment complex, turning to Gianna before she reached for the door. "I've been thinking about something," he said, voice low. "Tell me?" "I don't want to keep doing this in pieces. You, me, him, we're already a family. I just haven't said it out loud." Gianna turned to face him fully, her expression unreadable. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small black box. Inside was a simple gold band, nothing flashy but solid. "Honest." "I didn't get on one knee because I already know your answer," he said, holding it out. "You've been saying yes to us every day since we met." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She just took the ring and slid it on, her fingers trembling slightly. "I was going to ask you," she whispered, "but you beat me to it." He leaned forward, their foreheads touching. "I love you," he said simply. "I know, I love you too." From the backseat came a sleepy mumble. "Did you guys get married yet?" Gianna laughed, twisting around. "Almost." "Good," Jace said, already halfway back to sleep. "I want waffles at the wedding." They did have waffles at a rooftop breakfast ceremony surrounded by friends, students from the workshop, and half the neighborhood. Gianna wore a dress that caught the morning light like water, and Vance wore a navy suit with oil stains on his hands that he refused to wash off. Jace stood between them, holding both their hands, a mechanic's patch sewn onto his pocket that now read, "Family." And when Gianna leaned into Vance as they danced to a song neither of them knew the name of, she whispered, "This is the only world I ever wanted." Vance kissed her temple. "Me too." And with the city far below and their future stretching wide ahead, they stayed there in that moment, in that love exactly where they belonged, forever.